be coming into the waiting room, I'd ask for all the administrators and board members, you should all be co-hosts and able to mute and unmute yourself at will. I don't anticipate coming into the waiting room. I don't anticipate, sort of people jumping in and trying to be disruptive. So my intent is to make it so that people are able to turn on their video. And if we, pardon me, if we need to, we can disable that later if we do have some shenanigans happening like we did at some of our recent meetings. So we are live, we are recording. Let's call this meeting to order, this regular meeting of the Easton Board of Education at 7:33 p.m. on June 8th, 2021. Members in attendance, Gretchen Goldstein, Randy Hicks, Jenny Cheetah, Demma Weibel, and myself, John Stinson. Did I get everyone? Did I say Jeff Parker? I'm sorry, Jeff, if I forgot you, that was not intentional. I'm just a little rattled, and let me fix that. All right. So we will start with look at the approval of minutes. So we have the May 5th, 2021 Easton Reading Region 9 joint special meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved.
Thank you, Devin. I hear Jenny is the second. Very good. Any discussion? Hearing none, call the question. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Very good. Unanimously approved. Thank you very much. That takes us to the May 11th, 2021 Easton Board of Education regular meeting. Look for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, Jeff. Do I have a second? Thank you, Randy. And any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I see 6 hands. Thank you very much. Unanimously approved. It takes us to 2C, the May 25th, 2021 Easton Reading Region 9 joint regular meeting. Do I have a motion to approve? Thank you, Randy. And seconded by Jenny. Thank you very much, Jenny. Any discussion? Hearing none, call the question. All in favor, please raise your hand to indicate your.
I don't think that was all abstain.
That's right. Thank you, Gretchen. So we have 5 yeses and 1 abstention from Gretchen. Thank you very much. That takes us to our next item on the agenda. That's number 3, public comment. To indicate your intent to make public comment, I'd ask that you use the participants window to raise your hand. You should have the ability to do that inside of the participants window. I see Allison Bonhoff. Allison, you should be able to unmute.
Yes.
Good.
I was making dinner and still doing work emails. Allison Bonhoff, Gregory Farm Road, Easton. I'd like to say a few things tonight. One of them is about the surveys that you're going to discuss later. I've said it before, emails. I'm going to meet with somebody on the Board of Ed next week, hopefully. I hope it's not too late. But some of those questions are not direct enough to get to solutions. If you say, how do you feel about, do people make fun of you in school? And somebody says, yes, very much. And I don't know, it's a 1 to 5 scale, whatever it is. You have no idea whether that's because they feel they don't know the answers, they're not doing well in school, or that people are calling them nerds because they're very smart. So I think some of the questions, I don't know how you're going to actually act on the data points. So that's one of them there. There's also some other things in there that are not able to be picked out from there, like sexual harassment. You would have no idea if a child was sexually harassed in a classroom. There's nowhere to put it there. The other thing I want to touch on is the recent middle school principal that you're looking for, the interviews. Probably see some people in the invite here. that are here for that. And I went to both of the Zoom sessions for parents. I hope that somebody on the committee got the feedback from the parents. There were not many parents or public members on those Zoom calls. That tells me a number of things. But the main item that came out of there over and over again was the curriculum, was that we do not have a strong curriculum. We have let our guard down this year. We could all blame COVID, but it's done. And we were, halfway through the year, COVID was BAU, business as usual. It's the new norm. So that's the other thing I wanted to touch on. Curriculum, really digging in. That's what we're looking for. The parents that were on there from a new principal. And the last thing I want to just touch on is something that I heard the superintendent talk about. He did a big show in the beginning of when he got hired, wants to get parents' involvement in the community. And what does everybody want? Well, I was on those sessions, and the main item was engineering, robotics, curriculum, etc. Here we are coming up on 1 year, and most of our board meetings have been about the survey. They've been about, COVID related, etc. I just want to know when we're going to get back to academics and thinking about these things that were promised by a new superintendent coming in here. So that's all I wanted to say. I do appreciate it. I know I went over my minutes, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Allison. If you wouldn't mind just saying your street and town again real quick. I don't know that we got it at the beginning. The volume was low.
Gregory Farm Road. I said it in the beginning.
Thank you. Sorry, it was just hard to hear you. Thank you. Next up, I see Aminuski.
Thank you, John. Good evening, everyone. Many things on my list today. One, masks. The Board of Education needs to step up, and the superintendent. This is child abuse, having our children wear masks in school. The jig is up. Fauci lied. You need to make decisions because Lamont's not going to make them. Curriculum. We have really I'm glad this woman before me speaking mentioned curriculum. We have severe issues. And anyone that has heard me in the past 4 years, I've been requesting again and again the health curriculum, but can't seem to get it. I have part of the health curriculum. This Save Our Town, Save Our Schools group is going to be putting the health, quote unquote, sex curriculum online, which has sex ed for 4th graders, but most parents don't know that. Contact me if you want to see the information if you have a child that's in 3rd grade. We need an audit of the curriculum of Samuel Staples and Helen Keller, and the parents and residents are going to be asking for that this summer. And I hope that we get board support. The tri-board policy committee, I've asked for that material. There is no tri-board policy committee. So that invalidates some of the work that the quote unquote tri-board policy committee has done. And we will be looking to handle that further. NWEA scores, the only real validated testing we have, scores are down. I requested goals, the student goals, and I got goals for the school from Mrs. Kaplan and goals from Mrs. Baxatora. The goals are for the schools. They're not student goals. So we know it's all about the data. It's all about getting children's data all day, every day. That's not academic learning, not academic work. And lastly, I'm going to have some materials. This is from Camp Constitution. This is called School-Induced Dyslexia. So if you have children in the elementary school, they're forcing Common Core is damaging to children. If the child's vision system hasn't reached a certain stage, your child can be damaged by the education system. The Hurried Child, another book I recommend parents to get. And with all the sex crap that's going on in our schools, You're Teaching My Child What? By Dr. Miriam Grossman. Excellent book, excellent resource. If our curriculum director has put things into your child's minds that you're not aware of, it's getting into the classroom. But again, that will go with the curriculum work that hopefully we can review, and Common Core, SEL, and the other things that are not academic. Thank you.
Thank you. And Debbie, I'm sorry, Ann, did you say your street in town at the beginning?
Yes, Morning Glory Drive. Thank
Sorry.
you.
Thank you. Okay, so that should move us to our next agenda item, which is board member comment. Yes, Jenny.
I know there isn't an enormous audience tonight to hear this, but I just wanted to, since this is our sort of last school year time board meeting, extend an overwhelming, enormous thanks to every single person going back to last March that has rolled up their sleeves and helped our community through one of the toughest times in education in any of our, certainly, living history. So Kim, Rydell, Stephanie, Jen, Sue, if you could just take that message from us back to your staff, from our cafeteria workers to our bus drivers, the people in the media center, every single teacher, the people standing out there in car line, in the rain, in the snow, in the wind. I'm sure there are people I'm not thinking of, our office staff, our nurses, health workers, every single person who has participated in decision-making, logistics, instruction remotely and in person. It has been one heck of a ride, and our kids are better for having been a part of this community under your guidance and expertise and care. And we profoundly, profoundly thank you.
Thank you, Jenny.
That's it.
Thank you very much. Any other board member comment?
John, I've got a couple of things, unless somebody else has something.
No, please.
Okay, two things. Sort of good news, bad news. I'm going to go in reverse order. That's not really bad news. It's just sort of year-end reflection, I guess, on my part. I found this past year, putting aside everything that Jenny said, but I found communication, I think, whether it's at the board level, whether it's between board members and administration, whatever, to be a little bit lacking. And I'm sure there's lots of good reasons for that. But, being this toward the end of the year and looking forward to next year, I'm hopeful that we can improve on that. And whether it's return emails, and frankly, I might be a little old fashioned in that category, or, just general responses. Yeah, got it. If I can't get back to you in a day, I'll get to you as soon as I can. There used to be a time where the communication, and, to do this in one meeting a month, which clearly we've had more than that, is difficult when we don't have 1,000 things going on, when we didn't have the past year. But there was a period there where we would, as board members, not hold meetings online, but at least share communications. I, as a board member, not the board chair, had a sense of what was going on at central office and sort of the temperature there, hot, cold, boiling, et cetera. And I'm just speaking for myself tonight. Anybody else can have differing opinions by all means, but I don't get that sense anymore. So I'm looking forward to, increased level of communication as we go forward into next year. My second comment is sort of story time, but I'll make it brief. It's a brief story about a Helen Keller middle school student and his teacher. Recently, near the end of the school day, a couple of students were sitting in homeroom. I think toward the end of the day, I forget what that's called, but we'll call it homeroom for now. And they're discussing their math packet, which as an 8th grade student or a parent of an 8th grade student, you'll come to be familiarize yourselves with at some point. But it's a document that was created several years ago by a former HKMS teacher as a study guide, as I understand it, for 8th grade students to use and assist with their placement exams. And one of the boys in this particular classroom asked the other if he had received his math packet. And then the two wondered aloud how they were going to fare on the upcoming math placement exam. It seems the boys knew that polynomials were going to be on the test, but those tricky algebraic expressions that include variables and coefficients had not yet been covered in their compacted algebra class. Well, the teacher overseeing homeroom happened to be Mr. Ethan Fern, and he happened to overhear the conversation. And he offered to spend the next 3 days teaching polynomials to these two boys. And I happen to know firsthand that one of the boys, upon taking his placement exam, placed into honors geometry for his first year of high school. You know, listen, we as board members don't always get to hear these stories, but I'm confident they occur more than we know. This is what teaching is all about to me, and I'm sure to the rest of you all. This is the relationship, the bond that exceptional teachers make, and the everlasting imprint that they can have on their students. So thank you, Mr. Fern.
Hear, hear. Thank you, Randy. Any additional board member comments? Yes, Devin.
So I know we will thank Ms. Kaplan a lot tonight, but I just wanted to make sure that in the last first board comment of her last meeting, that she hears how grateful we are for her leadership. I reached out to her personally and told her that I was very sad that my kids would not have her as a school principal, because she's just such an amazing leader in person. And, you know, I just have learned so much from you before I was a board member and on the board. And so I want to say thank you to everything you've done for our town, for our schools, for our kids. And I'm sure since you're staying in town, you'll continue those things outside of our schools, but we will miss you. I will definitely miss you on this board, and hope to see you around.
Thank you, Devin. Any additional board member comment? Hearing none, we will move on to our report section. First up, Dr. Harrison.
Good evening, everyone. I don't have a formal report, but I did want to take a moment to also acknowledge Ms. Kaplan, with this being her last regular board meeting of her administrative career. And just say a huge thank you to her for her leadership, for her service to our students during this current year, but also the many, many students that she's been able to influence and impact throughout the course of her career. In that first meeting that we had, where I came to the school to get to meet Ms. Kaplan and Ms. Moore, we sort of bonded immediately over middle school administration, because as I've said a million times, it takes a really special person to work in a middle school, and an even more special person to be a middle school administrator. What I found from that first moment, that she really understood middle school students, had a heart for them, and would do whatever it took to make sure that they had what they need. And that first impression that I have from her has been consistent in my time working with her. And I know that our students are better for her having her leadership in this district for this many years. And I wish you well going forward. I know that you're not going far, and that you are still very much invested in this community and its success and the success of your students, both those that you have now and those that have gone before. So just a moment to say thank you. And then also just want to take this opportunity, with this being the last regular board meeting of the school year, to echo Jenny's comments with relationship to our special thank you to our teachers and administrators. And even though as we don't have the large audience that we've had in previous meetings, I am extremely grateful for our teachers' commitment, for their compassion for students, for their resilience during a really difficult year. And I think that they were able to model resilience for our students, who are with just a couple of days left, have survived a pretty difficult year. And I think that there will be some great lessons that they will carry with them, both academic lessons, but also lessons about life, that I think will benefit them in the future. I know that there are some other agenda items that I'll jump in on, but that's all I have for now.
Thank you, Dr. Harrison. Next up, Dr. Pearson-Ugal.
Thank you. I have a couple of updates for the board. The first is regarding Summer Academy. So I'm pleased to offer some good news about Samuel Staples Elementary School. There are currently 114 students registered across the 4 weeks. Some of the classes are already full, including some of the Ready, Set, K classes and the summer STEAM classes. So that's terrific news about Samuel Staples. Thank you for the patience of our Helen Keller families. Summer Academy in Easton is a completely new endeavor for us. So this was a big ask of our teachers after a year that no one could possibly imagine. Right. So we are so pleased that some of our teachers have stepped forward and jumped in and been able and willing to offer classes. At this point, I do not have an update about Helen Keller opportunities. We are working actively with the Reading Middle School team to possibly open up some of the John Reed courses to Easton students, but that is a work in process. And when I have a further update regarding middle school offerings, I will certainly provide it. Any questions about Summer Academy? Or I have one other update after that.
Yes, Jenny.
Stephanie, I do have a quick question. Certainly, I just wanted to say I would not be at all surprised that middle school teachers or any teachers just feel like they need the break. And quite frankly, I think they need that time this summer more than ever to refresh, to come back to do the best job they possibly can for our students next year. And just for the public, I've seen multiple listings in Westport, in Fairfield, in other towns. Everyone is looking for the same thing, trying to find summer faculty. And I think it's a tough space to fill for all districts right now. It's not unique to Keller. And the other question I had was, obviously, if there isn't a specific opportunity in Easton, or for some reason the connection with Reading, it doesn't work out, if we could think of crafting other materials and connections and resources, and being really thoughtful about pushing that out to families as an alternative to an in-person experience at the school this summer. I'm sure the wheels are already turning, but I just wanted to mention that I think that would be something to think about. If we could.
Thanks. Yeah, and I think that the middle school will be sending out more information about optional summer activities, if that hasn't happened already. I also want to add that I've been working with the Easton Public Library as well as the Public Library in Reading to collaborate on some in-school library experiences for the elementary school level. So I know that our Easton Library team is very willing and eager to jump in, and they will most likely offer one activity a week, probably at the early primary level. And so parents will be able to sign up for that, and then we will work to provide some type of lunchtime supervision. So students, in theory, if they're there for the morning program, could stay through lunch and then have probably a 45-minute library activity on site at Samuel Staples, and then be picked up by a parent. And certainly parents that just want to bring their child to school for the library activity alone would be able to do that as well. And that's also a new experience for us. And I'm so grateful to our public libraries for being open-minded and willing to jump in to support our kids. The second update.
Sorry, Stephanie. Okay. I think Randy, did you have something?
Yes, Randy.
Go ahead, John. Yeah.
So I just wanted to say, thanks to sort of the teachers at Samuel Staples who are sort of raising their hand to do this. It is a tremendously difficult thing to do, to start a new program. The mature program that exists in Reading has been running for years, and it's not to say that it's ever easy, but it's especially difficult to do something new and to try these things out. So I think much thanks to everyone who's doing that now, and also thanks to Reading. The Reading Board of Education and educators who said, how can we help? And like that process is not, not going unnoticed. I think we really appreciate that support from the town and from the people in Reading who want to see us succeed as well. So that's it for me. Randy?
Just a quick thing, Stephanie. When we talked about this a month or so back, I mean, did we have folks that had sort of raised their hand and then they changed their mind, or we were running on the fly at the time?
We surveyed our staff before we sent any information out, before we made any commitment. And initially, there were some staff members that expressed a tentative interest, sort of pending further details. And then as the year unfolded further, ultimately at the middle school level, at least, decided that they just couldn't make a commitment. I did have one teacher come forward as recently as last week to say that he was interested in offering a class if it wasn't too late, and willing to offer that class at John Reed. So I'll be working to accommodate that generous offer.
And that could actually be excellent, because that's, somebody getting the opportunity to be alongside people who have run these programs in the past and pop in and ask questions and all that stuff. There could be a real sort of benefit to that as a first year experience.
Yeah, absolutely. To get a better sense of exactly how the program runs and what's involved, so that we might have a better opportunity next summer in years following. All right, so my next brief update, I'm going to share my screen. John, do I have permission to do that?
Good.
I do.
I hope so.
Yeah, I do. So just a brief update regarding professional learning. I had some questions about the different types of professional learning opportunities that we provide. So I thought it was important for the board and the community to understand that when we think about professional learning, formerly known as professional development, formerly known as training, it's really broken into some different categories. There are times that we offer professional learning experiences for the entire school all at once. That would most likely occur on a day that school is not in session, one of the days prior to the students returning, or one of the days on the calendar when the students are not in school at all. The other type would be in a small group session. So that might be on an early dismissal day, but it might also occur during an extended team meeting. In typical years, we've taken time when teachers are working together and then tried to arrange just a small amount of coverage so that students are not missing out on instructional time with their regular teachers, but allowed a meeting to be extended so that a literacy specialist or a math specialist might come in and say, run a data team meeting or discuss a professional article or something of that nature. That's a small group professional learning experience, but doesn't necessarily require extensive planning and work with the calendar. And then finally, individual opportunities. And most often that occurs because a teacher, either by assignment or because of the needs of the students in their classroom, asks or is sent to some type of professional learning to meet the needs of the students, or on the other hand, because the teacher says, I've learned a little bit about this new software tool, and I have these wonderful ideas. I read about this virtual conference. Could I please take a half day and deepen my learning in order to benefit my students further? And in that case, the teacher would make that request in writing to the principal. The principal would approve or question or not approve, and we would go from there. The three basic different types of professional learning include entirely new learning. And an example of that would be the introduction to the new elementary math resource. Our elementary teachers most recently participated in a 2-hour introduction to the new math resource, entirely new, exposing them to a new program. So while teaching math is not new to them, the program itself is new and they need that introduction. Another type would be mandated, and that would be either by board policy or by state statute. We need to allow time either to teach something that's brand new to our teachers, or to do sort of an annual training. So an example of this could be bloodborne pathogens, something that occurs on an annual basis. In that case, it's not new learning, but it's a skill refresh for some. It could be new if you're a brand new teacher. It could be a policy that's brand new to us, and we want to be sure that all teachers are fully aware of the policy that's in place. Again, to be sure that they understand the ramifications for the implementation of the policy in their classroom. And there are times when there are expectations from the state that require us to carve out some time with the teachers and provide that type of either training or professional development. And then the third is probably the most common, and that's the ongoing learning. And that's really part of our ongoing continuous improvement work. And an example of that would be that every year in my budget request, there is some money that's set aside for ongoing, I'll use the example of literacy professional development. So I will request an equal amount in Reading as I do in Easton, with the goal of having the two districts collaborate, so that if one district sets aside, for example, $2,500, the other district does the same, I can set up the PD so it occurs on the same day, and both groups of teachers have 2 days. And that might be half a day twice a year or something of that nature. And that's fairly common. And that's probably the bulk of our professional learning. And I'm happy to take any questions on that.
Any questions for Stephanie? Okay, great. Thank you very much. That will take us to Mr. Zachary.
Good evening. Mr. Chair, can you bring up the transfer report, please, sir?
I can indeed.
Thank you. So you all should have received this. We had approximately $18,300 worth of transfers up through June 3rd. They are all related to either SPED or special services. The descriptions are there on the far right. The dollar amounts are on the one column in from the right, dollar amounts. They're all from the 1200 or the 1211 function codes. Are all one speech services. They're all the rest are SPED related. So if you have any questions, I can go into details. And I know Jen's available also if you have any particular questions.
Any questions for Clarence on the transfers report?
Let's see, the second line item there, special ed excess cost adjustment is a negative.
That means it's a negative because it means it's money we get from the state, Randy.
Okay. And it went to other professional services, BCBA. Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
Good.
Yep.
Okay.
John, one
Yes.
other thing for Clarence. Clarence, is that the last amount of money that we're going to receive from the state from our excess costs?
I have to check with my team. We got the second allotment. I think we've got it all in, but I need to confirm that, Mr. Parker. I believe so, but I'd like to confirm it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if you could bring up the budget object summary if no one else has any questions about the transfer report.
I can. Just
Actually, tell you what, I'm sorry. Can you bring up the healthcare report? Let's do healthcare because that'll tie into the budget object summary.
I can. Yes. That is much easier to do. I'm just going to need a half a second to pivot to the object summary. But yeah, here's the healthcare.
So you all should have gotten this today. We apologize for the late dissemination, but as you know, we get the reports in the first week of the month, and depending on the timing of the meeting, Vicki got the information yesterday, and I got her report today, and we churned it out. So if we scroll down to the bottom there, you see our average monthly claims are just shy of 190,000 at 187,738. Our year-to-date claims through May have reached the 2 million mark. We have Mr. Chair, can you scroll up just a little bit, please?
Oh, sorry. Yes.
There you go. So the claims paid, we've paid over 2 million in claims. Our balance in the bank is down to just under $330,000. We're gonna refresh that because we have some funds that we had encumbered, we hadn't drawn down from the town yet. So we'll be increasing that balance. This conversation will tie into a conversation a little later for the budget operative summary and any available funds at the end of the school year. But so right now, it's been a pretty good year. As you can see, we're slightly above the average from last year, but we're below our 3-year average. So all things considered, I think it was a pretty good year for our health claims. If there are any questions, I'm ready to respond.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I think Jeff. Yep.
So polite. Raising his hand.
Clarence, I'm looking at the reserve fund balance of 329,000, and it seems to me that we should be closer at by the end of the year to $1 million.
Mr. Parker, it's funny you say that because I requested a certain amount of money today that will put us close to $1 million.
Okay.
So that's the encumbered amount, basically.
Yeah. So basically, we've been basically living off our balance instead of drawing from the town. Now that we're getting down to this level, we're now going to draw from the town, replenish that balance. I suspect it was going to be part of the conversation for the budget operative summary. I suspect we'll have an amount encumbered left over at the end of the year. At the end of the year, we'll have to make some decisions about how you want to use that. But we had the encumbered amount, so we're gonna expend some of the encumbered amount and put it into our reserve to replenish the reserve. Then we may have some left over. We have to make some decisions about what we want to do with those funds. You can add to the reserve, or you can do something else. That's part of the discussion for a little later on.
A little bit later on tonight or at a later date?
I think Mr. Parker can't make it through the evening without us talking about it. So I suspect we can get on tonight.
So nice of you to notice, Clarence.
Well, no, this is usually the meeting when we kind of make those decisions. So I was just curious if the timeline was
Yes,
was the
Jenny,
same or if that had been changed. That's all.
Jenny's right.
Thank you.
This is normally the time that we.
Are there any additional
with the
questions
final
regarding healthcare or healthcare claims? So, Mr. Chair, if you can move on to the budget object summary.
Yes, indeed. Opening that now. Good.
I still see
Oh.
a healthcare report.
Yeah, sorry. Had to click
There you
twice.
go. All right, so this is what I'll call the stock report that comes out of eFinance Plus now. This is what you'll be seeing sort of going forward. We were giving you a modified version the last couple of months because we hadn't encumbered some of the salaries. But what I want to show you tonight is where we looked at the end of May, and then give you a preview of say where we look as of today, and you'll see a dramatic change. So this is going to help lead to the conversation about what we may have left at the end of the year. So if you could scroll down, Mr. Chair.
To the next page.
Just go down to the bottom unless someone has, you guys have it. So if you have particular questions, I'll go, but I just want to see. So at the end of May, we had $2.1 million of unexpended funds available, and it used 87.33% of our budget. So that's through May 31st. So that begs the question that Mr. Parker had asked me about, okay, so how do we get through June? What does that look like? So Mr. Chair, before I go, does anyone have any questions about May? I know you guys got this hard copy, so I was assuming if you had a chance to review it, I can go through line by line, but I don't know if you want to spend the time doing that.
My only question, and we'll probably get to it later, is why it's so different than the last month's report, but we'll probably get there, so.
Okay. You mean, when you say difference, you mean the balance available?
Yeah, unexpended.
Yeah, the reason why, Randy, is remember I told you I was giving you a modified format where I was going through and allocating anticipated expenses. This doesn't have that, so this is straight out of the eFinance system. I'll tell you, I was giving you a modified report to give you the anticipated. Since we're at the end, I just left it alone, and it's a straight. So that's why you see the significant numbers. There's a whole column here that I had input in the previous month's anticipated expenses. I didn't do that this month since we're towards the end, so you can get a better idea what we have at this point 1 month left. So those anticipated, some of those are occurring as we speak. if that makes sense.
If you're saying that essentially we have 1/12 of 17 million left to spend, then yes.
I'm saying we approximately have 1/12. I'll show you if Mr. Chair will let me share.
Sure. I'll stop my share.
All right, so let me open this up. Mr. Chair, okay, there we go. Let's see. Let me close this and get. There for 1 second, I got too many screens open. Okay. Can you all see that Excel spreadsheet? The numbers may be small. I'll increase the size, but can you see this?
Yep.
All right. So what I just showed you was that through May 31st, this was the same report as of today at 6:36 p.m. So just an hour or so ago. Same data. So, but I'm going to scroll down to the bottom to get to Randy's question about the change. So right now, as of today, we're down to $1.5 million. So we went from the 2.1 to 1.5 in 2 weeks. All right. So Mr. Parker, before you start having questions, I'm building up to it. So I know what you're going to ask. So
Okay.
So Randy, you're talking about 1/12. So basically, we have 10% of the budget left that hasn't been spent. But I'm going to give you sort of breakdown. So you see this 1.57. That's what we have available. We've got to calculate a projected payroll of 1.3 million for the rest to get through the rest of the year. All right. We have an additional 50 some odd thousand, what we call the night differential substitutes. We don't know what that is because we don't know what's going to be turned to, but the projected payroll we can forecast. We have some additional contractual payouts. This is sick leave, people that retire, and we're obligated to pay out. So that's another 10,000. Though this amount here, and I'll give you a total for it. That 1.378 million. That's sort of like we know we're gonna have to pay that. That's sort of not out of discretion. That's definitely gonna happen.
Clarence,
Then,
I'm sorry, can I just stop you there for a minute? Because I'm going to be thinking about something. I'm going to miss the
Sure.
good part. The 1.3 million is more than a month's payroll.
Yes, because we have balloon payments that occur in June. So June's always we have some teachers sometimes can choose salary instead of paying over the summer, they pay it all in June. So June's going to be sort of a slightly inflated number. So, but instead of having it over 26 pay periods, they'll do it over 20 or 21. I forget what so that's why June is an inflated number. But if you want, I said we have the detail that's been calculated to every employee, what the projection is, and it comes out to that 1,317,420 and 20 cents.
Okay.
We, as you know, we negotiated a VERP program, was 102,000 at 17,000 times 6. We talked about doing 37,000 for the food services. I threw in another 50,000 because things happen, and so now this is where I told Mr. Parker don't have a panic. So that puts you at about $343,000 left over. Now that's let me rephrase that. The 343,400 is what's embedded in an encumbrance in the health claims reserve. So that we think will not be spent. So if you release that money to other purposes, where'd it go? So we think, hold up, I got showing you the wrong thing here. Net result to Mr. Parker, your question, we think you're gonna end up with about $343,000 to make some decisions on after we take care of the 3 contractual things and then the 3 sort of at your discretion, though you've already obligated the VERP, though you don't have to pay it this year. I would recommend you do pay it this year. That way it relieves off next year's burden. Same thing with the food service fund. So our current estimate was that we'll have approximately $343,000 that you all have to make some decisions on how what you want to do with it. You can add some more to the healthcare reserves. You can do some other things that people have been putting off. So, but if Ms. Parker, your question to me via email was, how much do you think we'll have plus or minus to sort of to contemplate what to do with? So at this point, our estimate's around $343,000.
Clarence, if you scroll up to like line 201, it says 1378. And are you adding the next three line items there, the 102, 37?
Yes. So what I did was this number here, I didn't give you the details. So this net number. So so yes, I am adding. So if I just go, and to your point, Randy, if I sum these, oh, it's giving a double negative. So hold up. What I did, Randy, I took this 1.57, what we have available, and basically I just subtracted it out. So I've got that plus the sum of these. So these are all negative, so they'll come out. So that's how I get to that number. Oh, I got a double. That's how I'm getting down to the 343, Randy. I'm netting these negatives. Oh, you know what? There you go. There it is. I was double counting it. So this number, you end up a net of about 10,000. You release the encumbrance, and that's how you get that 10,000 plus the encumbrance. That makes sense.
So what you've got here is a final number just based on the object summary of basically $10,000.
Yes.
But the encumbrance that you're talking about, is that all healthcare?
It's all healthcare. So just to give you an example, we have budgeted $2.6 million. If you scroll over here to the left, we budgeted 2.6. We spent just over 2 million. That leaves a net of 536. Some of it we know we're going to use. So that out of that 536, we suspect we'll have another 343 left out of that 536.
Okay, so you're counting on a $200,000 June, basically.
Right.
Yes, basically, because if you go back to our healthcare report where we were averaging 187,
Right.
we're assuming a $200,000 June, and that's how we get down to that number.
And that leaves what in the reserve?
Right.
We should be about, I think my calculation here is about 817, which would be 100,000 more than you started the year off with. You can always, you could add more, but I think it'll put us about, so this is what we're transferring over that we decided today, the 687,300. We have 329,885 as the end of May. That gives you $1 million. Then you got claims of 200,000 in June. We'll give you the 817.
And our recommendation from our experts on this subject is we don't need to be that high, correct?
Yeah, 2 to 3 months.
I think it was 3 months.
It's 2 to 3 months, and you could use a $300,000 a month. You could use a $150,000
Exactly.
a month.
That was our thinking. If you worst case you have a $300,000 a month, you're pretty much covered. You don't have to be 100% covered, but you're at least 90 some odd percent covered.
So seven would be a pretty safe number.
You started the year with 718.
Yep.
But based on the transfer we did today, and assuming we'll have $200,000 in claims, you'll end up at 18. That number will fluctuate depending on what June's claims turn out to be. Now, one thing you got to remember, people have probably got their deductibles out of the way at this point of the year, so they'll have more time, so they may have June's claims could be higher.
June could be high. Yep.
And 2 questions, I guess. The first one, we're sticking with healthcare for the moment. What, Clarence, what did Brown and Brown or whomever recommend for next year? Did we use their budget, or we just?
We did not. We went with your own number. I have to go look it up, but we did not use their number.
Which I think was flat, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. But the only change I probably would make is I would take the miscellaneous out and put it into the 343 or 353 or whatever. Only because in theory, we'll be sitting with 800 and change in the healthcare reserve. So if that meant, 393 or 403 going back to the town, I think that would be tremendous. But
well, like I said, your choice what you want to do with it, but I know there's some things that that we could put to use, not the whole amount, but it's just a question of letting the building administrators know that what we may have available and how much you're willing to spend or support that or not, or just give it all back to the town. It's your sort of your choice. But I know there's some things that they've been trying to get done that they haven't had the funds to do. So whether you want to entertain that or not, that's to the board to decide.
I mean, I'm open to hear them for sure. I think everybody on the board would be open to hear what they need or, what they're looking for, what we're looking at. So, yeah.
Yep. And just so everybody knows the intent, I'm sorry, Jenny, go ahead.
I just wanted, before we move away from this slide, I wanted to ask a question about the 817,185. So we're saying that's in excess of a recommended amount. So, but once that money is in the reserve, it stays there, or is it a possibility where we can take what we would consider, I mean, not really excess, but above the recommended amount and add it to the 343,400, and it becomes a part of the discussion about what goes back to the town? Or
Jenny, once it's in the bank account, we've already drawn it from the town, so it goes into the bank account. And one of the reasons why we did make this decision last year, and I guess in previous years, we asked for a certain amounts over the summer, which put a strain on the town. They didn't have it available, so we're now making sure we have the reserves in the account, so we don't have to go ask them for those months in advance. So that was part of the rationale for why we basically put 2 months plus average back to get back over to where you start the year at. So basically, it's $100,000 more than where you started the year last year.
Well, I think
okay, I'm not sure that I understand everything you were saying, but I'm not sure that my question was answered.
Once the money's in the bank account, which it goes to a separate bank account for healthcare claims, it stays there, to answer your question.
It can only be brought out for healthcare spending. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't think we have any interest in adding more there then right now, unless there was, a very credible advice that makes sense, which I don't think we've had that.
No, I don't think there's any need to add to the 817. We've got 343.4. Again, plus or minus probably $20,000 on either side. I know that during the budget process, we had talked about wanting to make sure that we are able to take some of the expected money that we had hoped to have at the end of the year and put it towards some projects that we all deemed important to us.
Right.
And to the running of the school. So I think now could be the time for those conversations if we have have that list from back in April.
Yep. And so the intent, Jeff, would be that we, I think we're getting together with Reading. We originally had scheduled for the 15th, but ran into some of the year-end sort of step-up ceremonies. And that we would have that conversation there. So we pushed that to the following week. And we're just looking at scheduling now at that sort of week of the 21st to get together, and that we would have a specific conversation on that, for that topic. Yep.
Good.
What topic?
On the topic of what are we doing with the unexpended funds? And the later in the month, the better, for the purposes of having a sort of an accurate read on what that fund balance exactly is. I think, Clarence's estimates seem sound here, and we're probably talking about somewhere between 350 and 400. And then the question is, we look at that amount, we compare it against the priorities we discussed in April, and our obligation to give back any money we can to the town outside of what we need to do right by the students.
The conversation is critical. It's the timing that's an issue. I mean, we're at the end of the school year, and you're pushing it into summer vacation time. I mean, we just, what Randy talked about communication. I think one of my, I don't want to say issues, but concerns this year has been that we are adding meetings, that we're not addressing necessarily what we need to during our meeting time. And I don't have an interest in pushing that conversation off another 2 weeks. This is the time when we should have that discussion with our best estimate of the unexpended funds at the end of the year. We have our building administrators here. To me, it's an Easton board issue. It's not an Easton Reading board issue. So I guess.
Yeah. And that topic wasn't meant to be discussed in joint session. It was meant to be that the Easton board would meet. I think there is a value in having that joint session where we have any items that sort of affect K through 8 curriculum discussions and things like that. So the idea was that Reading meets at 6, we meet jointly at 7, and then we get together at 8 and have that conversation.
Did I miss a meeting or a discussion where that decision was made?
No, so the decision, we're talking about scheduling for that now. So if the board feels that we should have that conversation now, this is a regular board meeting. We're entitled to add an agenda item and we could have that discussion. I would ask if Dr. Harrison and Mr. Zachary are prepared for that conversation, if our building leaders have sort of fully vetted sort of the April conversation. It's a function of looking at the agenda that we're putting together and making sure that everyone's prepared for that conversation. If people feel prepared to have that conversation now, we can call on audible. We're within our rights to add that as an agenda item tonight.
I thought maybe I'm confused. I thought, Jeff, we just said that we were going to have that conversation right now. We just said we were going to have that discussion. Like 2 minutes ago. I thought we were moving from that slide into talking about this.
Yeah. So
we were going to hear from folks.
I think there may be some confusion. I would argue that is something that needs to be added to the agenda and not something that we can have simply as a part of the report section of this meeting. I'm happy to add it to the agenda if people feel prepared to have that conversation.
I'll make a motion, but obviously, Dr. Harrison and Mr. Zachary have to, I don't know if it's too involved, but it's basically going back in our memory banks and or a slide that says, here's what Helen Keller needs, and here's what Staple needs, and here's the 72,000 that is called for. But
yeah, I'm fine with us having that conversation, adding to the agenda and having that conversation tonight, if that's the will of the board. And Randy, I think you're exactly right. I just pulled up the slide from the budget presentation because it's really going back and looking at those projects that we discussed using unexpended funds for. My understanding, just from a calendaring standpoint, was that typically there were two Easton board meetings in June, and that this conversation always happened at the second one. Obviously, I wasn't here last June or the Junes before, but that just based on that, that's where I assume that's when we would be having those conversations. But I would, it's likely that that even though I hadn't talked about it with administrators, I'm sure priorities that they had several months ago with related to building projects hadn't changed. So I think we'd be fine.
Good.
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make an issue. It felt like it kind of fell out of the sky there a little bit as far as, the plan moving forward. If I'm forgetting a second meeting, I thoroughly apologize. That's
I think
we have a regular meeting on June 15th at the Easton and Reading regular meeting. That's a joint meeting. That's not a special meeting. It's a regular one.
Correct.
This isn't typically part of the joint. This isn't typically part of the joint meeting agenda. It's typically part of the June regular.
Right. But just to note, the 15th meeting is going to need to be canceled because the middle schools are having their step up ceremonies that night.
Right. Okay. Got it. Okay. Sorry, Jeff.
No, I think the important thing here is that we could have this on the 21st, and that would give everybody a chance to kind of reevaluate where we are and what we need. So long as we start the projects before July 1 and duly designate projects to be done, I'm thinking about the infamous oil tank that we were supposed to take out of Helen Keller. Sue's laughing, and Lord knows she should. It was a three-ring circus, but we set money aside, and the tank ended up coming out, I think, 3 days before school started, so or something nutty like that. So so long as we designate what the funds are going to go to before the 29th or the 30th or 31st of June, we will be fine. it'll be within our rights to do so.
Mrs. Parker, all I would
I mean,
say
I
is
like the
would get it
idea.
encumbered by the 30th. If I have it encumbered by the 30th of June, you're fine.
Right.
Right, exactly, yeah.
But if we could start the conversation this evening and maybe make some choices, we may not have to have a meeting on the 21st. As someone who's had 4 board meetings this week and we have more next week, I'm perfectly happy to not add another meeting for all of us.
And for our administrators beyond the, I mean, I don't know what the expectation is. I'm away, so I mean,
Yep.
I'll be in Chatham that week. You guys will have to make those decisions without me.
No, we're not making any decisions without Jenny.
Totally
And
fine.
so
We've rented the place next door.
let's say, move to add agenda item 6B, discussion and possible action to discuss special projects that may require funds from unspent funds in the 2021 Easton education budget.
Thank you, Randy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jeff. Any discussion?
I just didn't. What do Kim and Sue think?
What's first on the list? Well, well, we can recreate the wheel, but let's go back to if Dr. Harrison has the slide.
No,
let's go back
sorry.
and start there.
It just as a
We have to vote on it.
this point where we have to vote on adding it to the agenda before we actually start getting to it, and we'd have to get through the rest of the agenda before we get down there. So I think right now we're just talking about whether or not we're going to add it as an agenda item.
You're right. Sorry, jumping ahead. All right.
That's right. No, that's okay. So Jenny was asking, wait, but now we're in discussion for it. Jenny was asking whether or not there's any feedback from the administrators as to whether or not we should talk about that tonight.
Sorry. Yeah.
Is that our cue? You want us to jump in?
Yeah, if you feel strongly one way or the other about having that conversation.
I was thinking throughout this whole conversation, I do know that the head custodian has been talking to me an awful lot about expanding one contract with Swan, but it's not a project. I don't know what he wants for projects, but I can tell you what I'm very concerned about, because I walk it every day, is the Samuel Staples parking lot. From the back of the school to the front of the school, I think it needs crack sealing again. It's starting to crumble along the edges of the driveway. It's certainly a very big project. I'm not talking about replacing the whole thing, but maybe if we do crack sealing, maybe that'll save it a little bit longer. But I haven't talked about it at all with Clarence Zachary or my head custodian. So.
Okay, thank you. Sue?
The only thing I was going to add is I know back in November, when we put in our budget requests, we had some items that I don't have in front of me. Clarence, I don't know if you could pull them up, of the items that we thought of. And I know a few other things have come up since then at Keller, since that time, that would need attention, but don't know if we want to talk about it, like Kim says, tonight, or wait until we have more information from the head custodians for the next meeting. But certainly I'll be able to speak with about the items that we put in on October.
Okay. Any additional discussion? I'll make the point. Well, I am in favor of going into the discussion and adding the agenda item. I do think that for the members of the public to be able to know that is something that's going to be coming up, and to say one way or the other if they feel strongly that all of the funds should be returned to the town, or that none of the funds should be returned to the town. Making sure that they're aware that that it's clearly stated that's going to be part of the agenda. This is a regular board meeting, so we are perfectly within our rights for FOIA purposes to add the agenda item and to discuss it and take action. But I do have some concerns about members of the public having the opportunity to hear and to join us.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'll add an additional comment. as you all know, may be aware, we've engaged some firm to do some building assessment, condition assessments. There's been a recommendation for 2 additional more in-depth studies for Helen Keller, which we didn't do because we didn't have the funding for. So if there is a discussion about use of funds, I know those 2 additional studies would be very beneficial. One dealing with the water flow towards the building, and one was a more invasive search behind the walls of the brick. So that's something, if you were going to talk about something, some of the stuff that Sue spoke about will be probably covered in the building condition assessment, but we got the recommendation for a more in-depth look at 2 of those items, which were 2 separate studies. So I would definitely want to advocate maybe adding those onto the list if you were going to pile a list of uses for the funds.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Any additional discussion? Okay. Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of adding the agenda item? Aye. Looks like we are unanimous. Very good. So all in support. There is now an agenda item. I'm going to say 6B. Is that correct? Yes, 6B. All right. Very good. Thank you. So any additional questions for Clarence? Okay. So when we come to 6B, we'll take a look at the items that we articulated in April and have additional discussion there. Very good. I think, Mr. Zachary, anything else to add before we move on to Jen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Jen, the
John,
floor.
just a
Yes.
point of
Oh, sorry.
clarification, I guess.
Please.
Sorry.
Yes.
So we're not settling tonight on a number of unspent funds to go one way or another, or are we?
I think we're within our bounds to do that during that 6B item,
Okay.
as you proposed the
That's fine.
agenda item. We could do that. So we could bottom out on that, and we'll see how that discussion goes.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Jen.
I only have 3 really quick updates. The first is the state is moving to a new IEP format. For those of you who are familiar with special education, know the IEP is the prescription in which we determine services for students. And as you know, at the end of every meeting, a parent gets a copy of what we promised to do to help support their child. The state is piloting next year, and it will be rolling out the year after. It's what's called an interactive IEP, which means that everything will be connected to a lot of the state portals. Like, for example, whenever there's a change in the student management system, there will also be a change in the IEP and vice versa. So it's supposed to streamline. And the idea is that the parents will get the IEP in real time. So in other words, the parents will be given an access code, and they'll be able to access their child's IEP. So there's been a lot of discussion at the state level, and of course it requires significant rollout on the district part. So most of our summer months will be spent, making sure that we are ready to roll out the new IEP format. The new IEP is also designed to give parents a stronger voice in the process. There is what we call a parent, right now we have what's called a parent section, but now we're supposed to, in the new IEP, it really captures what we call the student profile. What are the students' hope? What are their dreams? What did the future hold for them? So as we get more information on the new IEP format, I will be sharing it with the board and its implications. So the other update that I have is that all the districts were invited to apply for what we call a special ed COVID stipend. It's not a grant. It was a one-time small amount of money that we could apply for to support special ed students coming out of the pandemic. In other words, we can't use the money to offset expense that we've already incurred. It has to be used for the future. So the good news is we were awarded the stipend, and after looking at our special ed numbers, so if you look at my board report, we have a total of about 83 students that have identified reading challenges. That is their primary disability, whether it be speech and language impaired, specific learning disability, or dyslexia. We have about 83 students in which reading is their primary need in special ed. So one of the things that we are using the money for is to really strengthen our teachers' resources in providing instruction in reading and reading intervention. As you know, there's we apply what's called a Wilson reading program, but the Wilson is not for every child. You know, there are other structured literacy supports like Orton Gillingham, so Inspire. So we have to make sure that our special ed teachers have a lot of tools in their toolkit to really make sure that these students can access their reading goals. So I've been working closely with Dr. Pearson Dugal to make sure that the PD that we provide our teachers is purposeful and meaningful for them so they can access the general ed curriculum. So also one of the things that I do want to bring the board's attention to in my board report, I know that we've had 21 PPT meetings in the month of May, and that may seem like a high number, but in reality, that probably is very much aligned with what happens during the month of May. Often what happens in May or June is as kids transition from one building to another, from Staples to Helen Keller or from Helen Keller to Joel Barlow, parents want to make sure that receiving school is able to support their child just as the previous school has. So we do see some more parent referrals, particularly during that month of May. I call it the panic button has been hit. They just want to make sure everything is set and their child continues to be successful. So that's why we start to see those numbers in May be a little bit on the uptick. It is not COVID related. It is something that we looked into. The other thing is at Staples in the month of May, we've also had 3 new referrals, which is a little bit interesting to see. And these 3 new referrals, one student moved into the district, which sometimes happens. They move in April or May. And others, you know, sometimes we couldn't make a decision in a previous PPT meeting. So we decided, let's gather more data and come back to the table and do a second meeting to make sure that we have all the data we need to make sure that child is supported. So those are really my 3 updates for, do you have any questions for me?
Any questions for Jen?
Jen, you've already answered them in your report. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay. That will take us to SSES building report from Kim.
You know, if you wouldn't mind, I always go first, and given that this is Sue's last meeting, I would like her to go first.
I think we'll need a motion and carry the 5. No? Okay.
Not making a motion.
Motion to not have a motion. All right. Sue.
Thank you, Kim. I will be brief as well. We have a lot more to come tonight now that we added that new item. But so let me just give you a brief update. 2 years ago at this time, we had 4 new students registering for the next school year, like between May and this time at the June Board of Ed meeting. A year ago, when COVID had begun and there was an exodus out of New York, for example, we had at this time of the year 10 new families registering for 10 new students anticipated for this school year. Right now, we have 8 new students that we know are coming internationally, out of the state, and within the state. I anticipate that might mean that we're going to have a busy summer for enrollments once again, like we did last year. The school has 95% of our students in now. We're down to 5% of the students in cohort C. It is feeling so regular, so normal. The kids are really having a wonderful time being with each other in person, and all the activities, classroom work, everything is really come alive. And it's wonderful. And my third item is simply because it is my last Board of Ed meeting. I want to publicly thank the staff at Helen Keller Middle School, the very supportive parents who have been so active in their children's education alongside with us, the students who, the reason for all of us to come to school every day, have been fantastic, and the community members. I've been at Helen Keller for the past 13 years, and the collaboration of all these parties on behalf of the students has been nothing but a joy and an honor for me. So I thank you all for this opportunity.
Thank you, Sue. Are there any questions for Sue? No? Okay. I have something I just wanted to say. So, on the behalf of the board, thank you for your commitment. Thank you for all you've done for our students. I truly believe that your legacy is out there right now as the next generation of leaders, and they'll continue to be making an impact on the world for generations to come and paying that back to the next and the next generation. So I don't think it's possible to underestimate the value of the good people who are out there in the world, thanks to your contributions. So thank you so much. We did work together to get you a small token of our appreciation. Now that we're on Zoom, I'm going to have to use, Mr. Fern didn't just do something really interesting when he worked on the polynomials. He's been working with his students on a transport device, you could call it. I think it's more of a matter transfer device, and the students have done some really great work there. So let me just see. Oh, hold on. Sorry. Let me see. Okay. So we got you this gift. It's not a toaster. No, it's this. Let me see if I can send it through to your toaster here, though. So Ira should. Yep. There we go. Okay. Let's see. Oh, there you go.
That is very funny.
Okay. So
that is amazingly funny. And I just want to tell you that the man who just delivered this package to me through all this robotics and STEM work, after this meeting, we'll be celebrating our 36th wedding anniversary together. So it's a special day. Thank you, everybody, and thank you for this.
Wow. So there, you'll find a gift card to one of your favorite restaurants, as well as a very nice something that you can put drinks in.
Open the box.
Oh, you want me to do
you
that?
Don't have to. I just didn't want him to tell you before you opened it.
It's just, it looked like she wanted to open it separately, and I didn't want to pressure her to if she wanted to do that. So
it is the will of the people. I will open. I'll make this quick.
I hope you're left-handed.
It is my favorite restaurant. Thank you.
Chuck E. Cheese.
Chuck E. Cheese.
I have my trusted assistant here opening this box. It is sad we can't be in the media center doing this, but
Agreed.
It is what it is.
Soon.
Oh my goodness. That is beautiful. It's a beautiful crystal picture.
Yes.
And that is gorgeous.
For lemonade, of course.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I just want you to know that Randy and I picked that out.
Who knows better? Who knows better?
Like I said, it's been an honor to be with all of you. So thank you.
Certainly. Thank you. All right. Kim.
Thank you for letting me go second. I have a couple of school matters that I wanted to talk about first. you might remember my mentioning, I think last month, that my guess was 85 for incoming kindergarten. We have passed out 85 kindergarten packets. 54 of them have been returned. So we're missing 31, which is pretty good. I hosted kindergarten orientation through Zoom on Wednesday. And we had about 40 people, 40 different students who attended. I did a presentation, as did the kindergarten teachers, and shared with them that we are very hopeful that school in the fall is going to return to a typical year. So we showed them photographs and videos of what it looks like now with kids at desks, which is just absurd in kindergarten, to what it looks like in a typical year with tables and no masks and such. So I think they have a pretty good read on what it's going to be like. I'll invite them in for a visit in August, which will include a tour of the school and a little bus ride, so that they can at least have a little image of what their new school is going to look like and what a bus ride will feel like, so that they don't worry that night before. I always worried as a little girl, and it's important to me that they feel safe and happy in the place where they're going to be going to school. So that's the plan for kindergarten. I did want to share with you that I wasn't in the building yesterday, but we got a couple of emails saying that the building was hot. And I wanted to let you know that I had a good conversation with the head custodian today. We had 2 classrooms who had, had a thermostat that the set point was still in the winter mode at 72 degrees, which explained that. And then there were a handful of teachers who kept the doors open, because that was indeed the advice we gave them at the very beginning of the year, at the peak of COVID, that, when the air comes into the classroom, the hallway exhaust draws it out of the classroom so that the air is moving. So it works great for things like air circulation, but it doesn't do great things when you're trying to make a room cool. So we directed everyone to close the doors today. There was one classroom in the 4th grade. I passed my head custodian and Marty from Public Works working on 1 unit ventilator. When I came back at 10:30, they were gone. And I actually never did find out what was going on with the 1 unit ventilator. But I do know that classroom, the kids in the classroom were in the classroom for the second half of the day. So I guess they didn't need to be relocated. And I'm guessing that it worked out well. The only other thing that I wanted to mention, a great thank you to the PTO, who, gosh, they're such an imaginative group of people who were relentless in trying to think of creative and wonderful ways to recognize every single adult who came to school every single day, to make it a wonderful experience for the kids and for themselves. So to the PTO, Jessica Zanetti and Danielle Fonzo, thank you so much for all that you did. And to the Samuel Staples staff, they worked so incredibly hard. Their back was up against the wall. No one was trained to teach in remote learning. And they figured it out. They really worked so hard to persevere through some really challenges that no one could have conceived of. And they did a wonderful job, and I'm incredibly proud of them. And the last thing I wanted to say really was something to say about Sue. I won't share my personal remarks to Sue Kaplan now. I have an opportunity to do that later in the week, but it's really for all of you fine folks and the community that's watching our Board of Ed meeting tonight. I've worked in the district for 17 years, and Sue has been there for a little over 21 years. She was a 5th grade teacher in my school when I became principal. She became the assistant principal for the very lovely and competent Joan Parker, and then later became principal of Helen Keller Middle School. And throughout all of my years that I have worked with Sue, in all of those different positions, I have admired greatly her steadfast commitment to students. She has a real, true understanding of what makes them tick, what is both the art and the science of teaching. She is about as fierce as they come. And I admire that. I think a lot of people think they know what a principal does. But unless you've served in the role, I don't know if everyone truly can appreciate how lonely the job is. You're the last person that's invited to any party for sure, and you can clear a room better than anyone. And you have to have a good sense of self. You're a public figure who is speaking at a lectern, or you're speaking at a Zoom meeting or a Board of Ed meeting, and you're expected to have the answers on a dime. And frankly, the job is so fast and so varied every single day that sometimes your brain freezes, or sometimes no one communicated something to you, and yet it's widely communicated among, I don't know, your staff or your parent community or among the students. And you have to be able to communicate. And you have one shot to do it the right way because it's such a public role. And that is a very difficult and great challenge that we undertake. And you need to have critical friends. And Sue has been my critical friend for all of my 17 years. And I've been that for hers. And I need you to know, for everybody who is watching, there is no one more dedicated, more selfless, or more passionate about the work of public school education than Susan Kaplan. She is a gift to this district, and one that everybody should remember moving forward. She will be missed, and those are going to be big shoes to fill. So I thank you, Susan Kaplan.
Wow. Thank you, Kim. Any questions for Kim? All right, thank you very much. That will take us to board committee reports, and we'll start with the DEI update.
So I was going to pass the baton to Dr. Harrison or Dr. Pearson-Ugal because they had some updates about the survey timeline. And since they're working through that, I thought they would be better than me.
I'm happy to provide an update. We expect to complete the last steps that are required before we send out the survey to parents and to staff. The parents to, if they are interested in having their student take the survey, to log on to PowerSchool and provide that active consent. The process of getting all of the information into PowerSchool requires some website work. And so that's quite labor intensive. So that's taken a number of days. And once we complete those last steps, we expect to get the surveys out to parents and to staff. And again, the parents then to consent on behalf of their children. And then those surveys will be available to the students only after the parents provide active consent. And we expect that to occur later this week.
Okay. Anything else? Yes, Jenny.
Stephanie, I just have a quick question. How long will the survey window be available for people to choose to participate and provide feedback?
Yeah, that's a terrific question, Jenny, especially as we bump up to the end of the year. And we know that we are not asking students or staff to necessarily take the survey during the day if they are going to participate. Dr. Harrison and I had a brief conversation about this. Dr. Harrison, do you want to follow up?
Sure. So, some of the initial conversation that we had related to the survey was that we initially thought that students would be taking the survey during the school day, but after further discussion determined that it made more sense for us not to use instructional time and give students the opportunity to take the survey at home. And so we're not as bound by the, I was feeling lots of pressure, like, we have to get this in by the last day of school. This will allow us to leave it open a little bit longer beyond the end of the school year. I think that adds a lot more flexibility with our families, particularly those who want to have an opportunity to sit down and go through the survey with their child. And, you know, we're hoping to get that survey pushed out, or the invitation pushed out to our families as quickly as possible. But we already know what the beginning of what next week looks like in the evenings with, you know, the various stepping up ceremonies and graduation and just some of the end of the year hustle and bustle. So we want to be really flexible in leaving that survey open for a couple of weeks once that information goes out to our families. And again, like we mentioned, the analysis of the data really is a summer project for us. And so, you know, it's not something that we're trying to shove into the last couple of weeks of June before we get to, you know, real vacation in July. One other thing I just wanted to add, on to Stephanie's comments. Randy, you had asked about the survey policy, and there were the different forms in the suggested policy. We were waiting to get some an update from the attorney. You remember that we sent the surveys just to get the final feedback. They had given us some initial feedback, and so part of what they gave in their response was just some more information about which form to use. It's probably going to be a mix of that form language with our own language that really satisfies the statutory requirements.
Okay, terrific, thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Any other questions, comments for our DEI committee work? Okay. Takes us policy committee. So the joint policy committee, and that is in fact a thing. We meet every Friday. Stephanie joins us most Fridays. Oftentimes Dr. Harrison will join us as well. We have members from the Reading board, the Easton board, as well as the Region 9 board. The committee was founded as a part of a motion that was duly noticed on a joint board of education meeting. So Easton, Reading, Region 9. I believe it was the regular meeting in January of 2020. I can go back and triple check that, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And actually, I think Mr. Zachary has looked at that recently as well, so might be able to confirm. We did, sort of talk about joint committees in that meeting and formed that as a part of a motion that all the boards voted on. In doing so, we created that joint policy committee. In that meeting, we started sort of going through a set of model policies that are suggested by CABE. So the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education. They do a lot of work in the policy space. And essentially it's every time that the state or every time that the federal government or any other institution, empowered to make rules. So, any part of the federal government or the state government that can make rules that impact us, that we have to react to, CABE is on that. And they have a team of people who are looking at those rules and then working with attorneys to draft language that says essentially, we recognize there is a law, we will follow that law. So we started with looking at the existing policies. Reading has their policies, Easton has its policies, and Region 9 has its policies. And we recognized that there is just a mess, a Frankenstein monster of policy manuals that are largely not sort of digitally consumable, searchable, et cetera, and that's a problem, especially when it comes to central office administrators being able to quickly understand the rules of the road as it applies to any situation that's enshrined in those policies. So the policies themselves go from the 0,000s to the 1s, the 2s, the 3s, the 4s. I don't think there's a 7,000 series for some reason. But then there is certainly an 8 up to a 9,000 series. The 9,000 series is specifically bylaws. And those bylaws tell us what are the rules of the road when boards of education meet together. That's the one section where we have said, these are not the responsibilities of the Joint Policy Committee. It is the responsibility of individual boards to dictate their bylaws. The rest, let's try to coordinate as much as possible, unless there's a really good reason for us to differ when it comes to rules around food in our buildings. Let's try to be consistent because we think there's a major advantage to the administration of those policies and the responsibilities, especially amongst our central office staff, to enforce those items. So we meet. We've been meeting for a year and change now, a year and a half. And even before that, we were actually 3 separate policy committees meeting jointly. Which is, was basically a policy committee of one. When I joined the board in April of 2019, I was joining for Cindy Short. And I was told there's a bunch of policy work that needs to be looked at. And Tom McMorrin handed me a book that looked like this, that was printed. There was no digital version of that book. And said, okay, you're supposed, because Cindy Short was supposed to be looking at the 3000 series, dive in and start looking at the 3000 series. And I read the 3000 series, then I went back and read the 0s and the 1s and the 2s and all the rest, and went, wow, this is a mess. And in talking with the other board representatives, they said, yeah, this is. And that's when we came up with the, let's see if people will support the formation of the Joint Policy Committee, and let's meet. And so we started meeting regularly. So that's the sort of brief illustrated history. That committee is not empowered to make any decisions, nor is any committee. Committees are simply doing the work of the board and then coming with those recommendations. So the committees do that work. They come then to their boards to say, here's what we propose. And policy in particular, there is a certain structure around policy that is, you don't just come to a board meeting and say, hey, everybody, we think the policy should be this. Good, done. The rules governing the way that policies are enacted is that you do a first reading and then a second reading and approval. And the first reading is meant to say, hey, everybody, we're talking about this subject. It's not meant to necessarily read it in its entirety or to go through a detailed conversation. It's simply to notice everyone in a really, really public and sort of upfront, transparent way. This is what we're talking about. And then in the second reading, that is when we would actually discuss more of the detail of that policy, and if there's agreement that we would approve that. So that's sort of the state of play. Looking back on when I joined the board and that really first set of responsibilities, I think it was even like before I was even sworn in that it was, hey, you should take a look at this, was I looked at the bylaws of for the Easton Board of Education, and it was suggested that that I kind of take a look and update them. I think we were very fortunate that that I didn't make some pretty major missteps in that work, because having been on the board now for a couple of years, I have a much deeper appreciation when I go back and look at the bylaws and what they mean. And I think probably in no small part, Jeff probably gave some guidance along the way of, hey, maybe don't dive too deep on that one, and maybe don't change too much on that. But I actually think it would be a really useful exercise, especially as we're talking about board vacancies coming up and being filled, for us to revisit our bylaws and to make sure that we're all clear on the role of board members, the responsibility of board members, communication, FOIA, like all of those things. I think it would be very healthy for us. And so I think we should probably dive into that. Possibly some kind of board retreat that we do in August. To be clear, a board retreat is still a public board meeting. It's simply a sort of long format meeting that you do in a more relaxed setting, but the public is welcome to attend, is welcome to do public comment and those things. But the idea would be that we're able to dive in and really sort of do some nitty-gritty work, maybe have some cheese and crackers as well, and that kind of thing. So it may be worthwhile. I know other boards have done this kind of thing, for us to consider doing something like that in the July, August timeframe. And I know, people are looking forward to some time off, but I really do think it would be valuable. So are there any questions on anything? I know I'm talking about a bunch of different things. Any questions with relation to policy committee work or anything there?
John, in years past, and maybe more recently, there's been conversation of someone on Rich Mills's team taking the CABE and doing all this stuff for us. And I can think of pluses and minuses. Have you guys talked about that?
We have entertained that idea. So where we've been stuck for the last, I think, 2 months or so is tri-board governance. And so we have almost every meeting we've been talking about is just trying to articulate what should the rules of the road be when we get together. And so we've gone through that process, and we have sample language. We are trying to get together sometime soon to say, hey, everybody, here's our suggestions. But as soon as we're done with that work, the intent is that we jump back in. We were in the 4,000 series. And we were, sort of humming along. We had sort of developed that process where people would go away, put notes together and then come back. And, that was valuable. I'm certainly happy to bring that back to the table and, maybe even, get a quote, like what would it take to catapult us forward to the end? I suspect it would be very expensive, but it's worth at least. I mean, maybe they'll be willing to give us some kind of quote on the number of hours that would be involved.
Well, I guess my understanding is they've done it.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't be necessarily unique to us. I think it's worth exploring, and not for tonight, obviously, but it's another conversation. We can add it to the wine, beer and cheese, or the wine and the cheese and crackers that you're doing in August. So yeah.
Good. Okay. Very good. Any other questions? We were considering next Monday talking about some of that tri-board governance stuff. I just think we have so much going on, and it actually touches on the next one, the personnel search committee, some of the scheduling stuff. So
one other quick item, John.
Please. Yes.
I think there's a policy. I think I stumbled across it at one point a year or so ago on the creation of committees.
Yep.
And the representation on committees.
Yep.
And again, probably a conversation for another night, but my understanding is that representation, we're not really a Democrat and a Republican board, except we are, but there's conversation, equal representation or, bipartisan representation. Are you familiar with that? Does that ring?
I'm familiar with the topic. It's not actually enshrined in our policies. It may be in the Region 9 or it may be in the Reading policies. But it's interesting because it's, when we start talking about, officer elections, for instance, right? There's all these rules about officers, sort of should be two parties, right? The board chair and the secretary should be from two different parties, and you should never have, right? No officer shall serve more than one term in the same office. The chairperson and the secretary shall not be members of the same party, and no person shall succeed a member of the same party in an office. Except that's all below the words "to the extent practicable," and I think that becomes the operative term when we're talking about people stepping up to take on those responsibilities, and the reason that Jeff put in more than his fair share of time in the role of chair for many years, and why I think we oftentimes find that committees will end up with who raised their hand. I will say for my part, so the policies that dictate committee assignment are pretty lightweight, and basically it's a part of the board chair description, which says the board chair appoints people to committees. For my part, I am anybody interested in doing the work. Like, it is hard work. Almost every committee to do that work, it is hard work. Anyone who says I am willing to contribute and show up, like, absolutely happy to have you there. We do sometimes have to be careful about if it's a joint committee, if Reading or Region 9 feels with their, gets their nose out of joint of us having too many people, or we're trying to stack the committee with our point of view. I don't get the sense that they're going to push back on that kind of thing, though, because I think, they recognize anyone who's willing to show up and do the work that they're comfortable with that.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. That's all I got.
Okay, good. All right. So finally, on board committee reports, the personnel search committee. So we actually have two personnel search committees going on. So the HKMS one, we have been meeting, we have been interviewing candidates. We had a tremendous level of interest in the role, which I think is a testament, Sue, to sort of what you have there, and the long history of great stewardship of that school. I also think it's a bit of a testament to this board. I'm not reflecting on my own contribution to that, but I do think that people watch these videos and they pay attention to, that people are getting along and being reasonable, and and not trying to rake our building leaders over the coals in an unreasonable way or anything like that. And I think a lot of people said that's a job I want, and that I think people should want that job. And so we've had a great amount of interest in the role. We've been talking to great candidates. We continue to have conversations with candidates. We've also had wonderful participation. We've had a member of the Helen Keller staff join us. Ryan Jockers has been a part of the conversations, really helping to ask questions and being an active participant in those conversations. And wow, I mean, just great, just a great, representative of the teachers in our district, as well as Beth Andrews, as a member of the PTO and co-president of the PTO, has been really faithfully representing parents and the role of parents in these conversations. And so, many thanks to the PTO, and many thanks to the Easton Educators Association for giving us those great contributors to the conversation. In terms of the director of digital learning and technology, we're flapping our arms as fast as we can and starting to get off the ground. We have had great interest in that role as well, and we've identified a number of promising candidates that we'll look to get together in the not too distant future. And as I said before, anyone who on the Easton Board of Education who'd like to participate in those conversations, just let me know, and we'll make sure that you're able to be an active participant there. Okay. Anything else before we move on to discussion and possible action? Okay, awesome. So we have, we're actually, I think we're going to skip item A tonight. We do have a nomination from the Democratic Town Committee, which is our practice that when a vacancy comes up from a Democrat, the Democratic Town Committee will give us a candidate. When a vacancy comes up on the Republican side, that the Republican Town Committee will give us a candidate. As Gretchen is stepping off of that role, we have a nomination from the Democratic Town Committee, which we're very excited about, but due to circumstances that I'm not going to get into tonight that are fully beyond the control of the candidate, I think it would be appropriate for us to push that conversation to our next board meeting, absent objection from the board. Yep. Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to B. Yes, Jenny.
Is it okay to ask Gretchen? Is this Gretchen's last meeting with us?
It will be Gretchen's last meeting.
I don't know if that would change that at all. We've been thanking Sue a lot, but I just wanted to thank Gretchen for her time with us. I wish that your beginning or the sort of the tenure of time had been under different circumstances. I think it's been an incredibly stressful, challenging, pressured, exhausting year on the board level, but you've supported us. I know the job of secretary is extremely time consuming. So I just wanted to thank you for doing that for us and say that we'll miss you. And I hope that you'll still stay involved. I'm sure, I know you will, but still, stay involved. We want to see you and hear from you. That's it. I just didn't want to let the meeting go by without acknowledging Gretchen's contribution and thanking her for being with us.
Of
Just
course.
an FYI, I have so many amazing things on my own plate, and I cannot give this position the time it deserves, and it deserves a lot of time. And that's why I'm stepping down. So that's all. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Gretchen. I
Thank you,
will
Gretchen.
note, because Gretchen is the secretary, as you noted, Jenny, I think at the next board meeting, we would hope to, anyone who is interested in that role, I think I would think about, sort of the time commitment and what that role means. I have had board members sort of express some interest in that. So I would just ask people to reflect on your sort of capacity and interest in the role, and certainly at the next meeting, we'll make sure that is an agenda item. Okay. All right. That will take us to 6B, which I'm sure someone actually wrote down the exact. Gretchen, do you have it? No. Okay. I'm wondering if Debbie actually has that.
Randy, did you write it down? He said it.
Or can you recreate?
I didn't
did
know if
not
you
write it
like
down.
Mr. Parkin.
No, I did not write it down, but I probably.
It was to discuss unexpended funds, right?
Right. So make a motion to discuss unexpended funds and the allocation of such funds toward building level projects. Building level projects, unexpended funds from the fiscal 2021 budget year.
Okay, good. So I think we have that agenda item. I think we have a motion. We may want a more specific motion as we come into specific dollars and cents that we're getting into. But for the purposes of getting us into discussion, do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, so now we'll enter into discussion. So Dr. Harrison, there you are. Everyone's moving around on my screen. Dr. Harrison, you mentioned before that you had the April slide. I'm happy to grab it if I don't know why, but I always have these slides at the ready. But do you have it handy?
I do have it handy. And it's actually, I'm going to go back to, I think it's from February. Let me just take a moment and share my screen. So in February or March, hang on. February 11th, we talked about potential proposed reductions, and in that discussion, we talked about 2 items related to Keller. There were the capital requests, and it was a number of things amounting in about $88,000, and then the roof repair, which was $10,000. As I was going through slides earlier in the meeting and just trying to look to see if there was more detail that I had in the slide, I don't have it in the slide, but I did go back and I pulled up the budget proposal from January. So I'll highlight that. And oh shoot. So we go down to 2,600, and we look at these areas that Ms. Kaplan had originally put on the list of capital improvements. This is the more exhaustive list. This is not the full $88,000. I was trying to kind of reconcile some of the different categories together while we were talking, but just didn't have a chance to dig deep into that. But this was some of the pieces that we said that we were taking out of the budget for 21-22 school year, with the expectation that we would try to use unexpended funds from this year to cover.
Do we have anything on the parking lot that Kim mentioned? No estimate.
No, because that's generally handled by, I think, the Department of Public Works. So it's definitely a need, and I'd say it's a safety issue, as Kim alluded to. And on this list that Dr. Harrison's shown, our A through D and J, I would classify as safety-related issues.
I'm sorry. Can you say that again?
On account 450 capital improvements, A
Yep.
through D,
Got it.
and J, I would classify as safety-related issues.
Okay. And the total for A through E, A through D?
It's about 30.
It's about $30,000, $31,000 for that, plus additional $4,500 for the asbestos remediation.
So 35, 36?
35 rounded, yes.
Yep. Okay. Anyone have questions on those items?
But the total that you just discussed, that was just for the safety specific items?
Yes, I'm making an assumption that you're going to prioritize safety over other things. So I'm just pointing out those items I would classify as safety related. So if you had to sort of draw straws, I'd ask that safety come first.
Yeah, I was just looking for like alignment of the total with what you just said. Okay.
I can, well, actually, I was about to copy the screen. That's on Dr. Harrison's screen, so I'll pull it myself.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to make sure I was matching the number with the right things.
So that is window security improvements, wall safety padding for the gymnasium, replace resilient stair treads and risers from lobby C and D.
Yeah.
That is not install window in principal's office?
I had promised Sue that we'd try to do that, but since she's decided to leave me, I don't know if I have to hold that promise. So
it should be her legacy for the next person coming in, since she's
Sue
been trying
Kaplan
to get a
Memorial
window for a decade.
I can tell you, we've been trying to replace that window for about 10 years.
So it sounds like the time we can put a plaque on it.
That is one heck of a window.
Can I just say one thing about being in the building for these years? You know, it was built in '64 and it had a couple of renovations. The last one was in 2000. There's some things that I know Clarence is doing has contracted out to have someone really evaluate all the buildings, and especially, you know, the things in Keller, but there's certain things that are not on this list that will come up later on. But in terms of safety and security ones, we have a security panel that controls all the systems right in that front lobby there. And every time something breaks on that, the repair people come and they say they don't make those parts. No one makes those parts anymore. It is so out of date. Just 2 weeks ago, someone came in to look at a door that wasn't closing properly in a hallway, and they couldn't fix it. So they had to call in a door company to come look at that. So there's a lot of things. I suppose it'll happen next year, Clarence, or the year after, when the whole picture will be shown in terms of what needs to be updated at Keller. And then the roof of the building, we just keep losing money making repairs every time there's a big rainfall. Leaks just come out of every different place it possibly can.
The roof is past its useful life. It's out of warranty. It's screaming to be replaced.
Can I ask a question about C and D? Is that happening because of water pressure coming up through the bottom of the building? Or is
those are on staircases, and that is most likely, what I'm told, what I've heard, Jeff, is it's just the adhesive is just decomposing. Okay. Yeah, it's and every time the custodians have bought like super glue type of thing to put it down, it just doesn't keep it down anymore.
Jeff, to answer your question, it is related, because the reason why the adhesive doesn't work is the moisture coming up through the floor.
Yep.
So it is related to that. And if you walk around Helen Keller, you will notice we have an abundant use of duct tape. And that's because the moisture coming through the floor is causing the tiles to pop. And as Sue pointed out, that's one of the things we'll be sharing with you all when we get the building condition assessment. is how to keep that moisture from coming through, because there's tiles popping everywhere, and it's caused damage. We were spending money fixing the result, but not the problem itself. So we've got to figure out what we're going to do about that.
Right.
One of the things that related to what Clarence alluded to earlier was the landscaping around the building and how the water naturally comes towards the walls of the building. One other thing, last summer when we had that tremendous storm in July, I believe it was, and that elevator pit, has a water coming into it.
Yep.
And we have 2 sump pumps in there now, and those type of things are big deals, when they go out.
So for A, B, C, D, E, and J, I come up with 39,207.
So one thing, Sue, you just brought this up that I see that's missing. Where is the elevator repair?
That's not in here. That is a very large
That's a big
project.
ticket item.
Okay.
That's a very big ticket item. Yeah.
Okay.
Because right now, you got to remember, these things are things that we can sort of assume in our operating budget. The elevators would exceed our operating budget capacity.
Right. To be honest, I just wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if I had the school wrong or if that was from one of the other districts.
Mr. Chair, could I ask that there is I don't want to talk about here in open forum, but there's an additional safety system that has an estimated cost around $15,000 that I can share later in executive session or something. But if we're talking about safety related items, I know there's another safety related item around 15 grand.
Can we say whether or not we're talking about physical or digital safety?
Physical.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have any sense of pavement repair of what the cost is in years past where we've patched?
Well, I take
order of magnitude different in terms of the difficult, how much more.
John, the discussion with on the driveway is that it has gone too long without major repair, and probably what has to, well, not probably, what does have to happen is a complete redo. And that's a lot of money. That's certainly a lot more than the $300,000 here that we're talking about.
Yep.
But that was one of the things that we were talking about in terms of a capital improvement, along with the Helen Keller roof. And so that's somewhere in the rinse and dry cycle with the Board of Finance.
Yep. Yeah. And
how are we going to address those things and finally make them happen? Is that a part of the bonding conversations that Clarence, you were talking about, sort of how to work on some of these larger issues outside of the budget?
Yes, so what we're hoping to do is once we present these building condition assessments, it sort of gets an outside professional view, have you all review it, then you have some professionals documenting what the problems are, and then we hope that'll buttress our case when we go to the Board of Finance and say, look, this is just not our humble opinion. These are what the professionals are telling you, and you have to make a decision what you're going to do. I'll just give you sort of a preview. They did say the building is salvageable. We don't need to abandon it. We don't need to tear it down. It just needs some TLC that we need to put some money in to make it up to the standards of our community.
One of the largest problems that we have is that the water table is too high. It was really too high when it was built back in the early 60s, and until that gets rectified, this is going to be a constant problem.
Correct.
However, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have window security improvement,
right,
safety padding for the gym. And even if, as my mother used to say, a lick and a promise for the risers, it is something from a safety point of view that even if it's not good long-term money spent, we certainly have to make sure the kids are safe.
Yeah.
Well, I just to continue or advance the conversation, so 40,000 plus or minus Keller. just on some of these basic items. And then and I think this is a to-do item, but to come back to the next meeting, if we have another meeting in June, what's an estimate of fixing the cracks, if you will, at Samuel Staples?
You might recall about, gosh, it might be 6 years ago now, that we had crack sealing done on the blacktop areas where the students play, because it was so thin, grass was just growing up and it was crumbling. Ed Nagy, who is the director of public works, was quite clear that there was a certain kind of crack seal that he wanted to use. He didn't want to use a plastic or a synthetic. He wanted it to be asphalt. And the company came from Massachusetts, and it was $10,000 a day. But they parlayed it into work that the town of Easton was doing anyway. And I think it took them a day and a half to do all of it, and it worked beautifully. But I don't know if Ed has plans to have that same company coming down summer 2021. Oh, besides which, you said that you wanted this done before July 1.
We don't have to have it done. We just got to have it encumbered.
Yeah, just a number, Kim.
Plan for,
and actually, Kim, this company comes through town, so to speak, every year. So this would be something that we could do if we I would think it would just be a matter of time.
Okay.
So is the idea then we get Ed to give us a number?
I think so. I think so.
Well, when we did the blacktop areas where the children play, Ed just gave me the contact name. The guy came, met with me, said what I just shared with you. I said when, and he just said, we'll give you the day when we're in the area.
Right.
Okay. So then
we should act on that again. Yeah.
That's right.
We who?
I think Kim, if it's not going to Ed, if it's really Kim has the contact and she can reach out, I think that would be the ask, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to get an estimate for the work, and it's probably, I mean, you know what you're doing, but probably what if we did all this? Okay, what if we did a little bit?
Yeah. Right.
Okay. All right, Kim just volunteered.
I think so.
She's not on my screen, but I'll take your word for it.
Kim nodded.
She jumped out of her chair. She's already calling the guy. I don't. Yeah. All right.
I just asked Sue a question about some of the other, I mean, I guess you'd call them more cosmetic issues. You don't have to convince me how important sunlight and space and, a working environment is as far as putting a window in. But as far as the carpet in the office, in the media center, I mean, I haven't walked in those areas in such a long time. I mean, are we talking about like rips and tears and stains? I mean, how old is the carpet? How long has it been there?
I don't know how long it's been here, but we've been putting it in as a request for many, many years. Yeah. But I will tell you, the media center this year was our auxiliary cafeteria. So we had students eating in there all year long. Being that we had this, the head custodian had this on our list for all the years I believe that I've been principal. And now that we've just had this year with children eating in there every day, that would be maybe a great item if it could be done this summer.
Mm-hmm. And then the fence around, I'm sorry, the fence around the custodial entrance, is it?
That's cosmetic. If you drive up to the front of our school, it's pretty ugly. From a cosmetic and a curbside appeal. When you come up to the school, the custodial door is just to the right if you're facing the main door. And in between is just a lot of items that if we had a fence around it would make the school look a lot better.
Oh, okay, so it's not, it says replace fence around custodial entrance, but so is there a fence there now?
There's a fence around a small area that was just repaired because it had, the door had fallen off. So, we're making repairs on that, but there's also all this piping in this area. There used to be brush and trees there that were taken down. So now it's all barren, and you can see, mechanical things for the school as you drive up to the front door.
Okay. Thank you. I'm glad to have a better understanding of what all of those issues are.
Dr. Harrison, or sorry, anyone else have any questions? Or Dr. Harrison, do you have anything else that you wanted to highlight for us?
No, I didn't have anything else to this time.
Okay, so in terms of taking action tonight, I mean, it feels like we have quite a few items here that we may be, may all be in agreement, may not, but that we also have at least one item, maybe, so I don't know what the cost of the security panel is and whether or not that's feasible. It might be worth getting a quote for that. It sounds like the elevator repair is out of reach. Pavement repair, Kim is going to work on. I am not looking for another meeting. I'm just trying to be realistic about sort of our ability to zero in on a number that's right and accurate. Very much open to suggestions here.
Well, John, let me ask Kim one more thing. Wasn't there a discussion about, I think in the machine room, you've got a lighting problem and you've got some stuff that isn't working well, and that would be money well spent?
We've taken care of that, Mr. Parker.
Oh, well, thank you, Clarence.
Yeah, there was an issue with the lights, and they
We were down to one light bulb for the entire mechanical room, and it was 40 feet in the air. So it was a safety issue. So we just took the initiative to take care of it.
Great.
Okay.
Anything else?
John, I just have a question about, is there anything else that we missed or is not covered under sort of COVID recovery monies or things that at later in the year as teachers are sort of inventorying classrooms? I just want to make sure there isn't anything else that we need to provide with regard to technology or furniture or, anything at all, building or academic related, for both Keller and Staples, that we haven't addressed yet. Sort of don't want to leave any stone unturned.
Well, I have a question about the extracurriculars for Keller. Did we put in enough money for everything? Because I thought we just put in 30,000, but I may have dreamt that.
I thought it was coming from we were going to file as a federal grant, so to speak.
Yeah. I have extracurriculars in the ESSER 2 grant.
Yeah, you didn't fund it from operating, to Dr. Harrison's point. You
okay, I just want to make sure that that's covered. That'd be a heck of an oversight if we.
Yeah.
That didn't happen.
Weren't we going to be doing that in some sort of phased way so that it didn't hit the budget too hard in the future?
That's right. We were going to reduce that the following year. Right. I think we were planning on stepping down. I thought, Jenny, that was maybe your idea to step it down.
Oh, I don't know. I just was asking.
Give me a second.
Everything is a blur at this point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Let me look back at the grant, and I'll tell you in just a second.
Okay.
Oh, we had that conversation, but I think we're going to see that. I think it's the ESSER grant that's covered this year, and we'll figure it out next year.
I've got one more. I keep going through my book here. We were going to pay the first year of the 3-year math program fee, which I think was 30,000 if my memory serves me. Would it be to our advantage to go ahead and just pay the bill now for the whole thing?
Yes.
Are
Was
we
that a
able-
yes, Clarence?
Yeah, that was a hearty yes.
Okay.
Stephanie, does that make sense with the sort of conversations with the reps that you've had and all that?
Yeah, I don't see it as being a variable figure. So I don't think there's any reason why we wouldn't consider that as a good use of money.
So what does that add up to, Clarence?
Stephanie, did we do it in thirds, if I remember correctly?
No, well, one payment this spring, one payment in July, one payment in July of 2022.
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, I have to think back because it was split between Easton and Reading, so I'm confused. I'm remembering the total number, but if we could afford to do at least one or two of those payments, that would be helpful. It would give you more flexibility down the road in case something comes up, because we know things come up, and I'd rather have the flexibility if possible.
Yeah. Do we know what that cost is?
Hold on, I can pull up the.
Was the whole bill 78?
Yeah, I think the whole bill was 78.
That sounds right, Jeff.
So you divide that in
Remember that?
half and then by thirds. So because that's how we spread it over three fiscal years.
So 13 a year. I mean, we paid the one this spring already.
Yeah.
So
We
would
did.
be,
I don't think they were even payments, actually.
No.
So I think it's worthwhile checking into that figure.
The first one was more because it was the teacher materials.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. The first payment just allowed us to get started with the professional development in the spring.
Right, which was like a big point of doing that now.
So I was able to go back and look at the ESSER 2 grant. So I put $10,905 of the of the $45,000 of extracurriculars in ESSER 2, with the plan of putting the other 35, the balance of about 34,000 on ESSER 3.
Okay. All right. Then I think that kind of goes to Jenny's point that we stair step back into this so that we don't have a big, $45,000 hit in once the grants are done.
That's right. So are we saying, do we final and we're right, it was 78?
I think they're still looking, but
Okay.
Let's see what the numbers are. I mean, I would support maybe moving July of 21 into June of 21, but I don't want to pull July 22 into June of 21 unless.
Yeah, it does seem a bit aggressive. And
You're just talking about the payment for the curriculum, Randy?
Yeah,
For the math
and
curriculum?
the math curriculum. And I go back to cash versus accrual. It's one thing to encumber it. There's no reason to pay these folks in advance of when the money is actually due. So I'm not recommending we pay them any sooner than they are owed the money, but we could encumber it in this fiscal year if that's what the board wants to do.
Yeah, that's the right strategy for sure. Yeah.
John, there are obviously, I think it seems like more questions than answers at this point.
not a crazy amount though, right? Just a few.
No, but enough to not be able to come to a set amount tonight saying, we're going to put X number of dollars towards these items, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then this amount is going to go back to the town. So to the extent that I won't be present for that final decision, absolutely anything that has to do with safety, defer to Randy as far as the math curriculum goes. I would like to see those items that Sue's been asking for pretty much the entirety of her tenure, or certainly as long as I've been in these meetings with her. The Keller Media Center, we're bringing our students back into the media center this year. There's going to be a new media specialist, and I don't think we want to have kids walking around on ketchup stains. So to the extent that we can add that to the budget, I think that would be an important thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a safety issue, but it's certainly is a part of the environment.
Well, and it's where
at
we have our
large.
meetings, right? Where we'll hopefully be back in person in the not too distant future, right?
Well, I don't want to make it about us, John. I'm thinking about the, I'm thinking about the
No,
kids.
but I mean, the public sees, that's like one of the major places where the public encounters our school and gets a sense for what this place is all about.
I mean, I certainly hate that we're doing this now that Sue is leaving. But I'd like to think of it as the culmination of so many years of her fighting so hard and telling us these things that were needed. And I put the window in, fix the carpet in the office, make sure the stairs are safe. You know, I mean, anything that the building needs that she has been telling us it needs, or that the staff is telling us that it needs. So I just want to leave tonight saying that I'm fully in support of doing that. And I still think we can do all of those things and give a responsible sum back to the town.
Mr. Chair, I have the numbers from the contract if you want them.
Yes, please.
We paid $20,000 by May 21st of this year.
Mhm.
We're scheduled to pay another $29,042.44 by July 15th.
Okay.
And then another $29,042.44 by July 15th of 2022.
Okay. Okay. And then to Jenny's points, carpet, I think there are 2 carpet items. Do we have those handy? I think
Right,
I'll had them on the screen a moment ago.
Right, one's for the main office, that's 18, one's for the media center, that's 28.
I will reshare my screen.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if you could also include that 15,000 I talked about for that security device, the physical security, and I can give you guys details offline if you like.
Yep, we'll do, we can do a brief executive session on that when we meet again. Okay. Anyone else have anything? And, you know, we are not saying all of these things approved. We will discuss in additional depth, but I think there's a really good sense, and Jenny, much appreciated sort of you going through the list and giving a sense of where your mind's at. Devin, did you have something?
Sorry. No, I just wanted, so Jenny is not for that here in that meeting time, and Gretchen won't be here. We'll still have a quorum. Just.
Yes.
Yes.
A quorum
Okay.
of 4.
Gretchen, right.
Fair quorum.
Okay. Yep. Yep. Okay.
Yep. Okay. Any additional discussion? All right, very good. Apologies, I'm distracted. I smell something burning. I think it's my teleportation device. All right, so we will go to public comment, number 7. And I see, oh, I thought I saw Andrea.
And can I just sneak in a really quick thank you to the board and administrators for entertaining the addition of that discussion tonight. I appreciated having some opportunity to be a part of it and hear folks' thoughts about things. So thank you.
And thank you for pushing for that, because I think that was extraordinarily valuable. Even if we didn't bottom out tonight, having the conversation and us all thinking about it, and then people being able to go away and do some homework, that's top notch. So thank you. Okay, so I see Ms. Blunhoff.
Yes, Gregory Farm Road. Any money that you can return back to the town, I think would be the best thing to do. You all talk about COVID-related items. So I think you also have to talk and think about all the people in town who have lost their jobs or who have had to take cuts in pay, unlike all those employed by the district here. We've kept everybody employed. But there are a lot of people in town who are still suffering. It's much easier to lose your job than to get a new one. So I think that as you talk about these items that are, going to make it look shiny and nice and new, you should also think about the people in town that have to pay the taxes. In addition, I don't know how much interest, participation you have from the community. I mean, there were little to no people on that Zoom call, on the 2 Zoom calls for the new principal. So to say the media room is where everybody sees everything, I don't know, kind of hits a wrong tune with me here. And that's it. Return the money, please.
All right, thank you. Ann Minuski?
Thank you, John. Piggybacking on Ms. Bonhoeff's comments, the money needs to go back to the town. Summer work. So I have a point here. Again, my background is counseling and education, and the summer is for our children to be relaxed over the summer. And there seems to be this this push for our children to be 365 days a year receiving an education by our education, whatever, the education system. There's great concern here because the kids need a rest. The parents need a rest, especially over COVID. I've spoken to a couple parents and I've explained to them that during the summer, your kids are on vacation. You don't need to follow any of the district suggestions. There is no such thing as a summer slide. That's by the Rand Corporation and Johns Hopkins University. There is no such thing. Your children grow and develop over time. So take this time this summer to enjoy your children. And if you choose to read a book with them, you choose to. And you can go back and tell the school district, the teachers, this is what your choice was because they're your children. Common Core has devolved public education to the point where they've pushed education down to first graders, expecting to read the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew, which is my era, somewhat. That's not a reasonable expectation. That's not a normal. It's abnormal. Our public schools are abnormal at this point. So we want to take some time, take a breather. If you want to read things with your children, certainly do so. Right before, actually between these meetings, between public comments, my son brought me my book I ordered today, which was Red, White, and Black, Rescuing American History from Revisionist and Race Hustlers from Dr. Woodson. And I think on one of the other Board of Ed meetings, maybe it's the tri-board, I spoke about Dr. Woodson came through the Yankee Institute of Connecticut and spoke, I think maybe in March or early April. So this is a great book and I suggest you read it. Dr. Woodson is highly regarded. He's got the 1776 Unity Project. Please look into that. It's probably good for like 7th and 8th grade students. Dr. Pearson Ugal, her comments on professional learning, it's word salad again. The Democrats just have this word salad. It's all about making new terminology. It's professional development. So parents step back and look at what they're trying to push. The experts, quote unquote, are circling the drain. Step back and see for what it is. It's your child. Your child is an independent learner. And the SBAC and the Common Core, it's all devolved public education. Read Charlotte Iserbyt's book on the reduction of public education. She was an undersecretary under President Ronald Reagan. So in the late 70s, what happened with public education. And it's not education anymore. So we need to help our children. Mr. Stinson, it is a thing about the policy committee. It doesn't exist. Whatever you said with Mr. Zachary, that's funny because you haven't provided it. It doesn't exist. So we are looking into constitutional lawyers because there is no such thing as a tri-board policy committee. You haven't done anything. CABE, you know, actually, Jeff Parker would know, like about 8 years ago, I actually questioned why wasn't Easton a member of CABE? Bad on me. Shada. Why did I ever say that? Because actually CABE is very evil. It's an NGO. And you know, Dr. Harrison probably knows, as he just laughed, you know, that's an NGO. So it's not about the public. It's not about your children getting education. You've got to step back and see, you know, your best interest for your child, your God-loving child. John Stinson, this 3000 series. I think you and Jenny were at the Easton Public Library in 2019, manipulating the bylaws. I took videos of you. That was really poor. So we have to see what actually exists as the bylaws for the policies for the Easton's Board of Education committee, because we need to know that the Easton taxpayers are following or having their, we're paying taxes to educate our children, but we sadly are seeing over at least 10 years that, again, NWEA scores, they're pathetic. And I think that's it. Oh, one more thing. So the early childhood, Connecticut Office of Early Childhood, they're bogus. Your child your child needs to, if you're thinking about enrolling your child into kindergarten, you might want to think of them being as a 6-year-old going into kindergarten, because the current policies, the current plan with Common Core, it's bad for our children. And I have a almost 20-year-old who it was devolving during that time. I had Marie Moss, who was the curriculum director at the time, telling me I should go home and read with my child. Well, what I didn't know until I researched it was my child had not developed their vision system, which typically doesn't develop until they're 8 to 10 years old. And they were causing my child to be dyslexic. So know where your child is. If you have questions, please contact me. Thank you.
Andrea Makanu, apologies if I'm mispronouncing.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So just a note here tonight. Our son is in 10th grade at Joe Barlow, and I know there's quite a number of subjects you discussed tonight, but one fundamental thing that is important for our family, perhaps for others, colleagues of my son's, is the fact that since last week, temperatures have been close to 90 degrees at Joe Barlow, and especially in the upper floor. So sometimes students are stuck in there for 2.5 hours in labs, and they are coming out when, picked up our son. He basically is white. Now, white in the sense that no blood flowing through through his his skin. And it's an incredible health hazard. If you allow me, I can post in the chat, and I see it's disabled, basically a link to OSHA. And it's pretty simple. It's guidance around what the law is for heat stress. And if anything is above 83 degrees, you can play with the calculator there. If it's above 82, 83 degrees, then it's against the law to have people working or even studying. So take that into consideration. I think this group, the administrators and the board, have a fiduciary duty to monitor that and make sure that nobody is in rooms that is above a certain temperature. I think if you guys tonight, you look very comfortable, probably 72 degrees, but if you raise the temperature to like close to 90, I think Ms. Devon, who's not going to be working the treadmill, or anybody's going to be very comfy, right? A lot of sweat marks on your shirts. And you don't have this incredible discussion. So I urge you to, go and walk the halls and find out what, and also the fact that, the students are sitting with the mask on, right? Even normal circumstance would be hard, but do go and do some of your due diligence to find out what it's like, and especially some of the upper floors. Do take, maybe, it's just a suggestion, I don't know much about your budgeting rules or anything, but take some of discretionary, whatever you have, revenue, buy some air conditioners. It's not going to be much to patch the driveways if they're not going to, if some of your students are going to fall down from heat stroke. So again, lots of good discussion. We followed it all the way through, but if you're stuck for 2 hours in a room that's overheated, then everything else is meaningless. So you talk about safety and stuff like that. This probably falls under that category.
Thank you. Could we have your street and town?
Yeah, Fieldstone in Easton.
Thank you. Seeing no additional members of the public, board member comment? Yes, Jenny.
Just want to finally say a few words to Sue. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. You have made, again, make this about myself, but certainly you have made me feel welcome, validated, appreciated, like a true colleague and friend. I have appreciated, I love what Kim said about you being fierce. I absolutely think that that's true. I think parents and students have benefited from that. I appreciate your frankness. I appreciate you have not candy coated things over the years. You have told us what we need to know when we need to know it. Always pushed for the students, always pushed for your faculty, always pushed for your building. And I just hope that you will continue to be involved with us and consider you a friend, and look forward to seeing you outside of these meetings so late at night. Hopefully can see you in the light of day when we all aren't so tired. So thank you so much for all of your years of service. And I'm keeping you close at heart as we look for a new leader. Hearing Kim's words tonight, thinking about the two of you as a fierce pair, because Kim, no mistaking, Kim, you are just as fierce. And we appreciate that too. But thinking about our next leader and how that person is going to connect, with people the way that you have. So good night. Thank you.
Any additional board member comment? Yes, Devin.
So I just wanted to quickly thank our teachers one more time. I know Jenny did at the beginning. I say this, I have 3 kids too who are at Samuel Staples, and this has been a really hard year because of so many challenges. I have a kindergartner who went into kindergarten in the midst of COVID. I actually almost didn't send him because I was so nervous about how different kindergarten would be and how much you would miss out on. And I think sometimes it's just so hard to realize how much credit our teachers and our educators and every single human in the building, bus drivers, janitors, cafeteria workers, just deserve for making sure all of our kids feel safe and welcome. And somehow it's like, they just didn't miss a beat. Like he just, I mean, and I, you know, he, if you ask him about kindergarten, to him, it was just so normal and perfect and lovely. And it just means so much to me as a mom, as a board member, as an educator myself. And I know sometimes things just get lost in all of the mania that is just our everyday lives. And it just means so much to me and to my family. And so I just want to extend that thank you, because I know with school ending sometime next week and parties happening this week, I don't want it to get lost. So thank you so much for making an unnormal year as like good and normal as possible, and for treating all of our kids like your own children. And it means a lot. So thank you.
Thank you, Devin. I'll just briefly say, sort of echo all of Jenny's remarks. I'll also just say echo Kim's remarks to Sue. I'm just going to pretend like I said all of that, really thoughtful, well articulated. I mean, like moving, just pretend like I said all that stuff. Because wow, like here, and very well put, Kim. I also just want to give a very quick, like, thank you to our central office administrators. I don't know how you do it. I mean, this times three, and you show up and you do very good work, and we appreciate all that you've done for us this year. And, you know, just thank you for hanging in there with us, and, you know, seeing the light at the end of the tunnel that is this year, but also just we're doing better to professionalize our practices and sort of get to the point where we can be more sane about these things and be more intentional about all of our efforts. So thank you. Jeff, Randy, anything you want to add?
No, I'll butcher an old Irish proverb, Sue. May your days be many and your troubles be few. May you tip a few in the presence of many.
Nice.
Sue, it's been quite a little run, hasn't it? And yeah, I think I mentioned at a board meeting, I don't think you were there, but you took over in a very, very difficult time, and you kept the boat afloat. You moved us forward. You helped heal a school that was hurting, and that is a yeoman's task, which hopefully we will never have to go through that again. But you were the rudder, and kept us going in the right direction, and for that I thank you very much.
Very good. Hearing no additional board member comment, look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Randy. I think Jenny is seconding. All in favor? Very good. We are unanimously adjourned at 10:15 p.m. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.